In this video, we are going to convert this PSD into this HTML using Bootstrap 4. Don't worry about the source code. You'll get the source code in the description. As you can see, I can switch here and there. It looks perfectly same, except the background because I have zoomed out. Fine. Now we need a folder, and in that folder we need one HTML file, one CSS file, and we have two images, one for banner and one for the grid one. Fine. Let me create that one for you right now, and these are the things which we needed. Let me create a file. The folder name would be PSD project 3. I have already created two projects for converting PSD to Bootstrap 4. Fine, let me create an HTML on my favorite text editor, which is Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a style sheet. Let me name it as style.css. We need the Bootstrap 4 template. So for that, what I'm going to do is we need two images as well. Let me copy paste the same images so that fine. Let's get into the template version. To get the Bootstrap template, I would be getting into the W3 school because it has all the CDN required for Bootstrap 4. If you search Bootstrap 4, you will get the W3 school. Just click on any links, try it yourself. It will load the HTML. Just copy the HTML and paste it into your index.html, and don't you can see it has required CSS file, it has required JavaScript, sorry, it has required bootstrap.js file, jQuery files. Let me paste it in. We don't need the JS right now, we just need the Bootstrap version of CSS, which is bootstrap.css. And now I need the font awesome icon. You can see I have used font awesome icons over here. Let me open the CDN. I have already saved it in the notepad. And now we need Google font, and we need to link our custom CSS, which is style.css. Now I'm going to do, let me zoom out to fit to the screen, and that looks okay. Now let me link my CSS, which is style.css, which is in the same folder as index.html. As you can see, this is one I have loaded it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the Google font, which is Poppins. So if you type Google font Poppins in this project, we are going to use Poppin font. This is the third video. In the previous two videos also we have used the same Poppins font. Copy the link tag and paste it so that we can use the Poppin font. And in the body we want the font family to be the Poppins or the sans serif. If the Poppins doesn't work, we want the sans serif to load. So let's style the CSS first. We will style this paragraph, and we will style the heading first. Let me give the font size, line height, and color for paragraph and heading. Now let's type the heading. The heading would be H3 and H4. The font size is 2.5. Now here the font size is 1.5. Line height should be 1.8. We'll change it later on. Now you can see the color I'm going to use is black. We need white. Now just for seeing purpose, just for making the output, I'm making it black. Fine, you can see it's a row. We have two rows, two columns. So let's create the basic HTML first. We have a row and we need two columns. The first column would be of col MD5, and the second one would be col MD7. So in the col MD5 column we have one heading, one paragraph, and one image. Fine, let's focus on the first column first. So we have an heading which has a text we provide, what we provide, and then we have a paragraph which is simply a lorem ipsum with 17 words, and then we have an image. We would use the image tag along with the class img fluid so that it fits perfectly to the as per the container class as img fluid. Now if you get into the second one, you can see there are again rows. We have two columns, so let's create a row, and in the row we have two equal width column, and inside again the row we have two columns, the one for font awesome and the second for the heading and paragraph. Let's create a row again, and again the column which is column d2, and then the column d10. So the first column will simply have the font awesome, and the second column will have the heading. And let's create a copy paste. Let me copy paste the font awesome. I have already used a cdn. Now this is a heading, and then we have a paragraph. It's also a lorem ipsum with 11 words. Fine. Now let me show you how does our html looks like. Close enough. Now we have to copy paste it three more times. Fine. Let me repeat the same row again. We just have to change the font awesome and the heading. You can see. Let's change the font. Let me change the font awesome. I have already pasted it on my notepad along with the headings. Creative strategy. Let me change the font awesome icon. We just have to change the name. We don't have to tag. We don't have to change the whole tag. Now you can see your font awesome is changed along with the heading. Now let's work on the padding and the container one. Let's give the font height to the heading as 600 for h3 and h4, and for paragraph it should be less than 500. Now if you refresh, and that looks okay. And the letter spacing be 1 pixel for the headings. Yeah, now we have a slide cap 1 pixel for each letter. Now if you see the second column, you can see there's a space from the top. So for that, choose the appropriate position to give the margin. And again you can see it is not fit. You can see the ux starting from the paragraph. So let me give margin bottom. Again let's give the margin top, and that looks okay. Now this time it's margin bottom. Now that looks, let me, yeah, that works. Let me copy paste to the next row as well, next column as well. Fine. Now you can see it is starting from the paragraph. Now you can see we have a padding on left and right, so we will place it inside a container. If the container does not satisfy, we will create a padding div. Fine. I think we don't need padding div for that, but we need the padding on top. So let's create a padding div. and this time we will make it as an overlay so that we can get a background with transparency, black transparency, along with padding on top and bottom. We should give padding, not margin. I will change it later on. So let's create a section to uniquely identify the column, sorry, the row, the section with id first, or you can say intro. Just surround it with our created html. Now let's get into the css. With the help of id, I'm going to give the background image to it. The background image, we inside the folder we have a image called banner. Fine. Now as I said, let me change the padding. Fine. Now let's style the overlay. Let's give the background as black so that we cannot see the background image. So get into the inspect and use the transparency in the Chrome inspector. Fine. Now let's change the background color for heading and paragraph to white so that we can see on the black screen. Yep, that is working fine. Now it's time for the font awesome to have the color was white. Choose the container, and inside the container we have an I. Let me give the color as white. Let's give the font size as 2em, and that looks okay. Now you can see. Let me give the margin top to the font awesome, and that fits perfectly with the heading. Fine. Now what I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to change the line height for 1.6 would be appropriate, or 5. I'm not going to change the line height, I'm going to change the font size as 0.9 or 0.7. Let me check. It is too small. 0.7 is not appropriate. Let me make it 1, and that's okay. I'm getting into the inspect part to give the white color as with little transparent. We don't need the complete white, we need the white with transparent. And now you can see there is gap between the two column. So choose this column and give margin right, or you can say padding right, as 5. 5 is the max. Yes, now it fixed perfectly. And now let me make the background size as cover, and background repeat as no repeat. Background repeat, I'm doing it because if the image is too small, your image would be repeated twice or thrice on the single screen, so that I don't need. Now let's add a padding to top and bottom. Again, create a div with py with the maximum 5, and surround it with our html, and that is the requirement for us. We need to cover the full screen, and that it does. Now let's get into the second container, you can say row. The transparent, I need to increase the transparent, I guess. Ours is little dark. And let me give the margin top as 5. You can see, yes, now it's equally distributed and there is no change at all. This is the index and this is the PSD. Now let's get into that second section. So let's start with the basic one. We have two columns. In the column would be inside the row, column D5 and column D7. And the first column will have a form and the second column will have image, heading and paragraph. So let's create a heading which would be make an appointment. And again we have form with 3 input field and 1 button. Let's create a form tag, and inside the form tag let's create the input tag, and this input tag and label should be surrounded inside the class form group. So let's create a form group, and inside the form group we need label and we need input field. Input type with text and class as form control. We need 3 times, so I'm pasting it thrice. We just have to change the label. And after that we are going to create a button which should be appointment. So let's create a button. Let's create anchor tag with class btn. This anchor tag will point nothing, and to give the color, let me give background bottom success, which will give you the background as green, and I will overwrite in my css as orange. The heading is transparent, so let's create a section so that we can easily point that heading. Let's surround this section, surround it with section. Okay, let's create the second column first. Let's create an image and give the class image fluid so that it can fit inside a container. And then we have one heading. We have already given style to the heading, so we just have to give the text to it. And then we have a paragraph. Fine. Now if you refresh, this is how it looks. The text, the heading and the paragraph is white color. So let's give a section with class. We can give any name. I'm going to use id here to uniquely identify this particular section. I have given the name second. Let's give the color as black. Let me check whether it is working or not, and yes, it is working. And let's give the heading h3 and h4 the same color. Let me see why it's not working. Yeah, it's working now. So you can see there is some space at the top, so let's give margin to it. Margin top, the 5 is the max I'm giving. So if you refresh it, and again for the second heading, let me give the same margin to maintain the same. Let's give the margin top to the paragraph, and that's okay. Now you can see there is some space around, so let's use that. Let's surround them with a container. Fine. And now we want padding top and bottom 5, top and bottom, and that looks okay. Now again, what I need is I want padding top and bottom 5 for the section as well. It's a class, not an ID, so I will specify it inside the class, padding top and bottom as 5. Now you can see the color has gone. Let me check why. Yes, it has come. It is because of the space I have given. Now we need some space below the heading, which is make an appointment. Margin bottom, or you can say padding bottom, you can give anything. In my case, I'm giving margin bottom as 2. I should have given 3 to maintain the proper format. Well, that's okay. Now let's give the margin left and right, sorry, padding left and right. And let me uncomment it. We want it. Fine. And now that looks fine. Now let's change the image. The image name is simply first, and that's what that works. Now let's change the button color to from green to orange. Choose a BTN class which you have already given on the HTML, and the background color be orange, and we need the border color as orange. And let the color of the text be black. Well, that looks okay. Now if you notice, let's change the, instead of dark black, let me make it light gray for the paragraph inside the section, inside the second section. Now we have, now we will change the font. The font does not look same. You can see it's a Poppins, but it has no font weight. Let me choose a font that has font weight with it. That means that should have a little bolder look. So let's choose this one. Select this style and let me embed it in my head tag. You can see that this has a font weight in it, which is 700. Now if you refresh, and that looks okay. The font weight is too much. Let me decrease it to 300, and now that's looking perfect. Get the source code to follow along with me. Thank you so much for listening.